Hi, this is Felix mertikat, and by the time of this video, I have no idea how to call the channel, but I know that we're gonna talk about cooperative board games today. The fact that I work on cooperative board games for 5 years already and haven't released one of them brings up a conclusion that there is something about cooperative board games I want to talk about. I guess the first cooperative board game I played was Pandemic, back when it was first time released here in Germany by Pegasus Spiele. And this was a mind-blowing experience, as every other game I played before always asked for that one person that wins the game. And Pandemic changed the way to think, well, how I think about board games in a drastically way. And I played this game like over and over times together with my friends, with my family, and until the day we really worked ourselves through Pandemic, and with the maximum amount of complexity and all rules in there, and we learned to win that game no matter how complex and hard the game mode was. And this was thanks to a very strong playing group in which we were three guys having like equal understanding of how the engine works, and we became somehow masters in understanding how the engine of Pandemic worked. And from that point on, we stopped playing the game because we understood the basics and the concept of the game, and started to looking for other games with a similar feeling of we're together against something in the game. And from that time on, I had a lot of cooperative board games on the table, but few of these games really made it into my top 10 after all. And I asked myself why, and what is that makes a good cooperative board game, and what are the disadvantages of a cooperative board game. And oftentimes when people talk about that, they say there is some kind of cheerleading effect. So one player takes on the role of a game master, and this player has the complete overview of the whole game and sees all opportunities. And then, by not just knowing this for their own turn, they start giving these advices to other players, and the other players on the table then have the sole solution to either follow that supposed strategy and feel like overwhelmed and taken away the control of their own turn, or they have to aggressively play against it and maybe even do worse turns, because a strong player knows the best outcome of a turn, and if you play against that proposition, you know that your turn will be less good, but from your human experience of autonomy, you want to have your own turn. So this creates a conflict in the team of someone taking bad decisions just for the sake of having your own authority in your gameplay, and the other players get frustrated by you taking the less advantage turn. And so the conflict rises because you don't forget these interhuman relations in games too. And this will also be a very interesting topic for another video, like player interaction. So oftentimes game designers try to find ways of how to juggle all these balls of problems that arose immediately with cooperative games. So one of them is, as I said, like the cheerleading effect. The other is that you have to have some kind of an algorithmic AI opponent or an opponent engine or a card deck which throws randomized but somehow purposeful actions against you, so which you have to overcome, so to make it more of a struggle. And interestingly enough is that even though we tend to say cooperative games break out from the rule that there's only one winner, and I would refuse that, because if you look at it from a game designer's point of view, you see that cooperative games are actually a two-player game. You have the engine or the game itself as one player, and the player or the players as a group as the opposing side. So you have two sides competing each other, and only one side can win. So it's actually a two-player game. And still, the game has no cooperative aspect to the meta of the game, because only one side can win, which is still a zero-sum game, because one side wins, the other side loses. And what cooperative games do is all players share the position of the one player entity at the table and split those up into several different actions. And in Pandemic you can see that clearly. Like, no matter if you play with 1 or 5 players, the game always hold up with your speed. Meaning each player can take 3 actions, and after that you draw cards, and you draw the pandemic cards there and see how where the new viruses spread. So you can even have 20 players on the other side, because after each player there is an enemy automatic turn, which again proves what I'm saying. Like, I do an action and the game does an action. So it's actually a two-player game that I have to wait until it's my turn again. But especially with pandemic, I can play this as a one-player game and have this nearly the same experience minus the waiting time. So what a lot of cooperative games do is they give out asymmetric player powers to enlarge the options a group has. So again, quoting Pandemic here, you have the logistics that is allowed to move another player character by 1 or 2 or fly it around. Then you have the troubleshooter that can have 4 actions, and you have the medic that can remove more of the cubes. So this creates the feeling of, oh yeah, we need the medic in order to win the game, and we need the logistics in order to win the game. And this is why we have to cooperate on the game. But imagine playing it with one single character, means the game progresses rapidly slower. So you can have like collecting the virus cures nearly the same speed. It will not change that much as you draw less cards, and you still have the same amount of actions before everything bad happens, except because you also have way less pandemic or epidemic cards in there. But let's look at other cooperative board games, like say ISS Vanguard. Again, You have a playbook and you have an automatic pre-scripted engine that plays against you, and you have to roll dice in order to compete with that engine. And no matter how many players you have, you do your actions, and then the engine itself does their pre-programmed magic. And again, one of you plays the security, another one plays the reconnaissance. But imagine having one character combining all these traits in one person, and you see like you have, again, a two-player game. There's all players as one entity in the game against the game. You can see this in many cooperative games. Spirit Islands, one of the best cooperative games. But again, the players play together against the humans conquering the island. And so we always stay in the theme of two-player entities competing for winning the game. And what I find interesting is how you can overcome the typical problems of cooperative games. Because one thing would be players want to interact with each other. They want to have like, I do something that has an impact on the game, so all other players see my impact on the game. But on the other hand, the other players don't want to wait too long until their own turn, because they want to feel that they have an impact on the game too. And that's when communication comes to the table. Players talk to each other, they interact with each other to prove that they really understand how to play the game. But on the other hand, all players always have an opinion on your actions. So would be an interesting way of, maybe you can come up with asymmetric knowledge, meaning each player knows a different kind of information that only they possess, and they cannot share it just by saying it. This would create tension between the players, because each player has its own set of knowledge that they bring to the table, and only they can maybe compete against. In this case, the player characters more split into different entities, each controlling a different aspect of the game. So I'm working currently on a cooperative game in which I try to use that design element, and it doesn't work that good, honestly. Because right now the game mechanically works pretty good. It's straightforward, it's easy, it's fast-paced, and all players always have a reliable and not a reliable, but an important decision to take. But I lose the interaction and talk part of the game, as each player, when it's their turn, they look at cards and they decide which card does what and which card should go to where. They should do this on their own, so no other players can interfere with that and say, hey, you have to do this, this, and this, and so in order to win the game. So I said, let's try to have asymmetric information distribution, and all of a sudden the players don't feel playing with other players. So I divided the group into several entities. So yes, they compete together against the the game, but on their own terms. And it turns out that it doesn't feel satisfying. So yeah, I have to come up with a way of how can I then again involve communication between players. So what can they talk about? What can they interact with? And there's always these two levels. Do the players interact, or do their player entities interact? So in other words, does their hero figurine interact with another hero figurine? Meaning only if you're in the same spot you can do this and that. Or is it something that the players interact with? So I have a knowledge that I can give to you. I see something that I can give to you, or you take damage, but I can take it for you, or something like this. So there's always player interaction between versus entity interaction. And yeah, I will take you on a journey with me, with myself, to find out how to solve that problem. And you can comment down here in the channel if you have your thoughts on how you can have asymmetric information distribution with, of course, no communication about it, because otherwise the idea would get lost in the first place, and still have interaction. So theoretically, and this is what I also want to do in this channel, is like having philosophical ideas of how we can, maybe someone can invent another type of cooperative board games. Is there maybe something like asymmetric information distribution, in which each player knows a different type of winning condition, for example? You can, I'm pretty sure immediately Nemesis comes up in your mind. So yes, Nemesis has a cooperative game element, a symmetrical game element too, and in the end it all tumbles because only a few players can escape the situation. So yeah, in this case you have a tension between players of asymmetric information distribution. But on the other hand, it still doesn't affect that other players knows best what you can do. Imagine you are in a room with the alien adjacent, and another player says, if you do this, this, and this, and this now, you can escape that and also help the people. And you have to actively go against that solution if your goal says something different. And this will reveal that you don't play together with the other players. So you always come to the same paradox. If you have asymmetry information and you cannot share it with other players, you isolate each player into their own corner of the game, which feels less interactive as if you have like a normal competitive game. And yeah, I'm really interested in finding solution to that, and I'm pretty sure I will have like several talks about this, because this is, for me as a game designer, as a very, very important and also interesting thing to think about. It's more of a philosophical question. What is cooperation, and what is the cooperation? What is not cooperation? What is cooperation versus agenda-driven cooperation? you know that, like, people work together, but they don't have their own agenda. Feels normal. Yeah, it is. In board games, we only know that concept from betrayal, from traitors, like in Battlestar Galactica. if it would be a trivial game if all players are truly cooperative and try to save the Battlestar Galactica. But as the game asks to have a traitor in the game, you add this double layer of not all players pulling on the same rope. And this is a German saying, and if it doesn't work in your language, maybe you get the idea, like the players don't work together properly because they secretly don't want the players to succeed. So this is also like asymmetric information. But as what I said, it's like about a negative player experience, meaning you again isolate players on the table. There's maybe 2 silent players and 4 or 3 non-silent, like human players, and you isolate each of them by having a traitor concept in the game. Oh yeah, I cannot do this, and oh, you don't do this, so you must be a traitor. Let's throw me in the brick. And I'm looking for a game that does this in a positive way, of having, I have information that are useful to everyone. I don't want to share it because the game experience makes so much more sense and is way more interesting if I keep that information, that don't isolate me for that information, but still feels interactive. And it would be a really interesting game concept. And I'm pretty sure that we have to find a new language, a new way of thinking to incorporate such elements. And again, if you have ideas, if you know a game that that features all this, please post it in a comment. This is like really interesting. And I don't say I know it, I say I haven't played it yet. And yet is a very important word in this, because I'm looking for that. I want to see where the board game industry goes. I want to see where the game design goes to. Like, how can we invent new games, cooperative games that have a complete different approach than today cooperative games? And yes, I would also count Blood on the Clock Tower, Human Punishment, Werewolf, and Battlestar Galactica to the cooperative game experience. And in this case, you will find 3 player and play entities. The game itself that tries to overcome the players, the traitors, and the good players. And you can see there's already like a judgmental part in it. There's the bad game, the even worse traitors, and the good players. And oftentimes players feel being the good player is the boring part. Being a villager is somehow boring because you have no secret agenda. If you are the traitor, you have so much more interaction and you have way more possibilities of interacting with the game. And especially in Battlestar Galactica, we have the game, the silence, and the humans. And the humans have to fight against 2 other enemies. The silence only have to fight 1 enemy, and the game only also plays together with the silence against the humans. But so this game is one of a few, I guess, where you have a cooperative game experience with 3 entities rather than having 2, like the players and the game. In the Werewolf and Blood on the Clock Tower and experience, you have 2 sides, like of course the werewolves and the villagers, and in Human Punishment you have, I guess, 3 to 4 different cooperative aspects. And in this game, the asymmetric information distribution is of course part of the cooperative game experience, because in the beginning you play together until you know with whom you really cooperate. And so social deduction games have for me, they fall into the cooperative game experience. Why? Because you isolate different players into smaller groups, and they again then play cooperatively against the other entities in the game. So often the situation when I try to create cooperative board games, I try to fix all these problems in one game, like having no cheerleader, high interaction, no isolation. I want to have, like, every player can have an impact to the game, and I want to have none to zero downtime. I don't want to have player then the enemy player enemy. I try to find something like all players work together in their turn and then the enemy works, which I try in TDO and like in Titan Defense Organization. And we developed this game over 7 years, and I think I had like 20 iterations to it. So I always called it the cursed game. It turned out that I tried to fix too many problems in one game, and it was not the game, it was my expectation of the game I'm creating, because I did Tsukuyomi and I really had a high. Like I said, wow, I managed to do a game of this magnitude. Now I can do any game I want. It turned out that having a cooperative game against a huge end boss was way above my skills back then. And I needed a lot of years and experience and failures to understand what really is needed to have like a boss fighter cooperative game, because I wanted to have a really cool combat system. I want to have a good movement system. I want to have high player interaction. I want to have like a really good end boss engine and all this stuff. And I stacked it all on top of one game. And of course, it always failed and failed and failed. And the final iteration we now have on the table is one that came up like not like all of a sudden, but as the carved and reduced version of everything we've done in the last 7 years to that game. And that's why it feels a lot of the time it fulfills a lot of these checks boxes of I things I like a combat system that feels interesting, like interaction. So we have one player rolling 3 dice per turn, all other players rolling 1 dice per turn. And then they can discuss in which order they want to go. Each die represents one single action. They can say, I want to have this, and this, and this. And they try to do their turn, and then the end boss, the boss, does their movement, and we try to make the actions of the final boss meaningful, which means huge, and players have to act and react to it. So we left out a lot of mechanics that can easily create other cooperative board games. So the point I want to make is I try to fix and I try to check all boxes with one game. And the interesting part is what boxes have to be checked for other players, for the players on the table. And most of all, they want to feel they have an impact to the game. And it was not the asymmetric information that really helps cutting away the cheerleading effect. It's the not like the how would I say, like if none of the players on the table knows what a perfect turn would be, you cannot consult them. So if you don't know what the boss monster will do in their turn, there cannot be a perfect turn. You can make recommendations. You can say, can you move there and do this? And you can find maybe the perfect action. But you don't know the perfect turn because no player can guess what the next card does. And also you cannot control the dice. You roll a die and this says it's a 4. And now the player has to allocate that 4 to one of the actions. And you cannot say do this, this, and this. Of course you can, but it's only wild guessing. You cannot know. So it turned out that by accident we somehow get rid of the cheerleading problem by having so many variables to one turn that no one single player can guess the right outcome. And that's also what makes it interesting to play it with more than 1 or 2 or 3 players. That's a game you want to play with 3 players at least. And I'm really, really thankful for all the feedback we got from players. Because as a game designer, I had no answers actually. I had expectations and then I had to listen to players. So in the end, TDO is a game that that was formed by the feedback of the players. And that was my takeaway from this, is put a game to the table and then follow the comments of the players. And so when since then, when I play cooperative games, I often check myself, is this fun? Do I feel like be seen or have the chance to really, really do something in the game? When it's my turn, does it feel important? Is it important towards a goal, or is it important towards the actions of the other side? And to name a game that I don't really like is Fathom, in which I can only make 2 or 3 actions, and moving one space is already one action. It feels like I do, my turn is like 5 to 10 seconds if I really know what I want to do. Then the engine does like place a new monster here, do this, then there's an attack, do this and this. Oftentimes it feels like it's 2 minutes of the non-player resolution and only 10 seconds of player resolution. And that really, really gave me a bad emotion about that game, because I want to be the player. I want to be the active part. Even in a Cthulhu themed game, I want to be the active part of the game, not a passive part. You know, the game is patient, but the players aren't. And maybe we can find new cooperative game themes and topics and rules that allow players to have impactful actions versus the enemy opponent actions that are patient. So how can I come up with ideas of doing so? And I haven't. That's why I do that channel. I want to ask questions and see if you or we in an interaction come up with new ideas, or maybe you are a game designer and come up with a great idea of doing a new kind of cooperative board game. Because cooperation is some very important part of the game experience, and I often like having these kind of games on the table, especially when I feel like I can impact it. For example, I like the let's see, where is it? The Big Book of Madness, because the game makes a really interesting trick. Every time I do something, I can also start developing my engine, my deck. So it feels like I slowly progress with my engine in the greater meaning of playing the game. You can interact by, hey, I have an action, someone else can do something, and you always in a talk to each other. But what the game does is they limit your actions to only a few options, and this is that what I can do, this or that, and it's always a discussion on the table. What would be the best outcome? But again, nobody really knows how to do come to the best outcome. All players have to check their cards, their special abilities, and see how can we manage to solve a problem. And I like that. And I really like to play a Pandemic. I played Wrath of the Lich King, which is like a Pandemic game. I also played Pandemic Legacy, and I like that. The Wrath of the Lich King played only recently, like 2 weeks ago, and I resembled so many things from Pandemic Legacy that we had a great fun of playing the game. And so yeah, if you are a player or a game designer and playing cooperative games, try to check back, which games do you like? Is it the games that allows you to act meaningful and have very few downtime? Or even more important, is it a game in which the downtime is also an interesting part of the game? Like, let's say I want to see what other players on the table do. Like really good cooperative games are, okay, it's your turn, let's see what you can do to the game. And you feel like engaged. Cooperative games. So many interesting thoughts go into these games, and I want to see new concepts of what cooperation can do, and also like this a good agenda-based cooperative game. So let's say you have, instead of having you win if you do this and that, maybe it's interesting to have a card that says you cannot win if not this and this is given. Let's say Pandemic Legacy, because it's an easy example. Let's say I'm the doctor, and it says you cannot win the game if there is at least one city with 3 viruses. So it's my personal goal to get these off the table, while the troubleshooter has the goal, you cannot win the game if not this. The logistics says you cannot win. No, let's say the builder, you cannot win the game if it's less than 4 of the headquarter buildings are on the table. So immediately players would have small agendas that helps driving the game forward, but still I do this as a personal agenda. I want to see that. I want to see like a game where I have like a positive agenda to the game that not hurts other people, that doesn't only benefit me, but benefit all players in the game. I like to see that. And I know that at one point there is a game designer that will do a game like this. They say, hey, I have the perfect idea for this. Because there's as a whole world I want to see. Thank you very much. Have a great day, and till the next video. Bye bye.